There is a wonderful habit in Africa from which I come. After the initial round of protocol introductions, of simply resorting to a very bad phrase, all protocol observed, in order to move things along. And as we are running slightly behind schedule at the moment, and wish to ensure that we do not delay any of the other panels unnecessarily, I'm going to begin by all protocol observed. This panel is central to what has been discussed already, but more importantly, it's central to the whole reason for the creation of the QCC in Abu Dhabi in the first instance. If there's no logic behind the creation of an infrastructure that enables quality on a progressive basis in order to achieve excellence, then there is no point in having a Quality and Conformance Council. So the core logic that we're going to unpack and explore today in this panel is why quality infrastructure is central in respect of the achievement of competitive positioning, government efficiency, export competitiveness, and social benefit. The questions that we're required to address are twofold. As quality infrastructure is in fact the bedrock of a globally competitive or world-class economy, because it enhances competitiveness, opens doors to new markets, and drives sustainability, how can we in Abu Dhabi today ensure that the quality infrastructure that is put in place drives and supports key growth sectors? We're then going to answer a second question around this, which is what industries are likely to benefit most from this in the course of the next 5 years. Now, you've heard what a splendidly representative panel we have here today. And I'm going to turn in the first instance to Humaid Al-Shamari, the Chief Executive Officer of the Aerospace and Engineering Services Division of Mubadala, in order to give us a first answer to this question. Why does Mubadala Aerospace and Engineering Services need a quality infrastructure in the Abu Dhabi environment? What benefit does it derive from that? And what does it wish to see in respect of that infrastructure going forward? Humaid.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about a vision of an emirate that was established in 2008. A vision that states by 2030, we want to diversify away from oil and gas-based economy and have that represent only 36% of our GDP. In that vision, we stated, Abu Dhabi government stated, a set of industries that the government would be interested to invoke upon creating that industry. The fundamental line in that all of that vision that drives us is a globally competitive industries. The thing about this vision that was pioneering in my mind is that it didn't want to create businesses and sectors for the market of Abu Dhabi, nor the UAE, nor even the region. It wants to be a globally competitive player in those set industries. And hence, in my view, comes the challenge that we've had. If you look at the different sectors that I control within Mubadala and Mubadala businesses, aerospace, defense, information communication technology, all three sectors are very, very highly controlled and regularized around the globe. And when we started this in 2006 and 7 timeframe, and we looked at the infrastructure of quality, certification, we actually didn't have any. Today, in all of those segments that we're playing in, we have to depend on our partners and international regulation to be able to certify our products and our capabilities to be able to sell them to the rest of the world. I'll give you a couple of examples. And in those examples, I'll tell you the needs, where do we need from this infrastructure that we're trying to create here with the QCC. Strata is a company that builds today aerostructures, composite parts, and sells them to Boeing and Airbus. You talk about a commercial aircraft that transports hundreds of passengers, including most of us. Who would want to be on a plane that has parts made out of a country that doesn't have quality or certification process? 100% of the products that we make in Strata is tested and qualified to be able to say, yes, this is exportable, and you can go ahead and put it on Emirates airline aircrafts or Etihad airline aircrafts. And that is the challenge that we have today. That infrastructure in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, is not robust enough for us to say, yes, we do have our own line of certification and qualification. And that's what we need from QCC. We have to go to FAA, to EASA, to Boeing and Airbus, and get their certification to help us to be able to say we are at that globe. It has never been a challenge for us to bring direct investments and partners to work with Abu Dhabi. Throughout our 40+ years of creation of the UAE, we've been very solid partners, and people are willing to work with us. The challenge that we have, ladies and gentlemen, is a very simple question. Do I continue to work with you as a partner? Do you believe in the same mentality and thinking of quality that we have? Do you drive that within all of your structure? Or is it just sitting, as David said this morning, at the quality control manager? And that is really the fundamental challenge that we have to convince people. Let me give you an example of two challenges that we have when we partner with people. One is my IP protected? Are you going to protect that IP just like it's yours? How is your quality system? China, 2-3 years ago, milk powder, baby milk powder, devastated the quality structure of that second largest economy in the world. And people started having thoughts and doubts. The UAE and its economy and its infancy of this economy cannot sustain that damage. And we have to be very careful, and I think this is one of the fundamental questions we have. The second example I have is Amrock, a defense specified company, joint venture that we created with Lockheed and Sikorsky. And the value proposition there that this is a company that we create for the region. And the question is very simple. How can we get those two OEMs to partner with us to service our armed forces? Because I don't think anybody here is interested that an F-16 flies on top of the UAE with a quality problem and maintenance and does not deliver the protection or the mission that we're promising our nation. Nobody's interested in doing that. So that is the fundamental challenge that we are asking for when it comes to this industry, these industries, is how can the infrastructure in Abu Dhabi, the quality infrastructure in Abu Dhabi and the UAE, help us position our industries, our companies, to be globally competitive?
I'm just going to do one very quick follow-up question. You will know much better than I do, but my number for Mubadala's investment portfolio at the moment, the entirety, is around about 55, 57 billion in terms of total investment. 62, you see, you can't even trust the web nowadays. Right, $62 billion in respect of total investment. Now, one portion of it you've spoken to absolutely superbly, the physical conformance to standard necessary to be competitive in the aerospace and engineering services businesses that you've described. The other element that goes a little bit beyond that, of course, is the investment that you are making and the returns on those investments that Mubadala as a whole, as an investment group, seeks to achieve, and you within Aerospace and Engineering Services seek to achieve. What I'm thinking of is that interesting diagram that Steve Lai showed this morning, where wedges have to be put in at certain points in time to drive excellence and drive quality beyond that certain point. How do you think of that in aerospace and engineering in Mubadala?
Well, it is a fundamental question, and I think a point that we have to deliver. At the end of the day, is it aerospace and engineering services? Is it Mubadala energy? Is it technology and industry? Or is it even the emerging sectors? Each one of our sectors requires that wedge, and that wedge has to progress. One of the things that not a whole lot of people understand when we're talking about Abu Dhabi Vision 2030, we're not looking at labor-intensive businesses. We're looking at highly automated, highly innovative industries, be it Masdar Institute, Masdar and the renewable energies, be it Mubadala Petroleum, where all of the exploration of oil and gas that happens outside the UAE, be it Global Foundries, the second largest semiconductor company in the world today. When you talk about that level of involvement in technology, that is one of the challenges that we face. With this kind of technologies and innovations happening on a daily basis, quality has to keep up. So yes, we're comfortable today, and Sean, in our understanding of the wedge, where it is today, and our dependence on the global partners and global organizations while we're waiting for the UAE and Abu Dhabi to build this infrastructure. But the challenges with each innovation, each new growth of technology, that quality standard has to move up. And you have to keep it up. And that is the biggest challenge that we have.
Super. Thanks very much. I'm now going to go to Wolfhard Hauser, if I may. Now, Wolfhard, apart from the fact that you have a stellar corporate career, you've been chief executive of Intertek since March 2005, and Intertek is the strategic partner and, to a certain degree, as it were, the quality supporter of the QCC in order to facilitate its path going forward. How do you play that role? What is the nature of that role? And how do you relate to what Humaid has described in respect of the need for conformance with global best practice standards and the need to continually ratchet up the quality that is actually provided by Abu Dhabi-based companies and institutions?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me say that Intertek is delighted that we have the opportunity to support the Abu Dhabi government and the QCC to achieve its vision for 2030. And for that, we are supporting them to help to build the quality infrastructure here in the Emirates. I don't want to go into details what we are doing. I think I want to take about two aspects, and I think that might lead to a broader discussion. The first aspect is, what is quality? We're talking here about quality infrastructure, and I think if you look back in the last 20 to 30 years, what we understand what quality is has changed dramatically. If you look back 20, 30 years, quality was more or less in most areas all about safety. Is an electrical product safe? You know, that is where all the organization historically came, like we've been founded by Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulbs. And were tested according to basic electrotechnical standards in that area. I think quality has changed in two ways, or the aspect of quality. One is the development of technologies. Nowadays, I would say you usually don't find a simple electrical device. In those devices, you have microprocessors. Those devices are more or less connected to the internet, be it by wire or wireless. So the complexity you have in today's products in all areas, from aerospace to very simple, even, let's say, toys for children, has increased dramatically. And the interaction of those different components, that is a new a new sense, a new level of quality you have to look at. It's not enough to do just a simple testing or to look into a simple standard, let's say an electrical standard or a chemical one. So technology has changed dramatically, and the combination of different technologies in today's products, that really has changed how we have to look into quality today. The other aspect in quality comes from the end user side, or let's for this forum simplify it just from the consumer side. And what a consumer globally today understands under quality has changed with the development of the middle class. You have, in the next 10 years, 1 billion people more in the so-called middle class. And the middle class itself has changed. The middle class, the income of the middle class around the world has grown more and more. And what I'm saying is that with that, what people understand what quality is steadily changing. I give you four very simple examples. When we did, for example, textile testing, shirts, suits, dresses, then 10 years ago, nearly 100% of the testing was just physical testing. You know, color fastness, does the whole thing shrink when you wash it and all that. Today, 40% of that is chemical testing, because people in the middle class are scared about acidize. They might be toxic, they might be allergenic, they might be cancerogenic even. That is only one example. Take food, you know, the quality aspect of food. It's not just whether it's hygienic and there are no salmonellas in food. You really want to know what is the content, what is on the package, what is the manufacturer promising. Is that really true? And we not only have the milk powder, you know, we had horse meat in Europe. We just had a recall in the US about USDA prime beef in California. It happens everywhere and all the time. And to avoid that and reduce that and get a better quality, you need a reasonable infrastructure for that. But it goes even further. If you want to develop a local industry which can sell products globally, it's not only about the product itself anymore and the complexity in there. It's about how you can use the product, the ergonomic design. Why is Apple so successful? Because, you know, it's not the technology. The technology in IT always existed there. But how to present that, how to design that, that really was important. And that is also and becomes more and more an aspect of quality. And then we should not forget, people today, the higher you go in the middle class globally, they want to know, how is a product being produced? Is there child work being involved? Can something happen, what happened in Bangladesh last year in the production of different products? How is the environment being damaged when that product is being produced? Is the product or the components of it recyclable? And many, many other aspects. So I think the overall quality aspect is steadily changing, and if we want to achieve the 2030 vision, we have to bring that complexity into our thinking in relation to quality infrastructure. And the second point I want to make is we supporting the QCC to achieve that. We're bringing in global experts who understand all these different aspects of quality, but that is not sustainable. What we have to do is we have to train, we have to coach the Emiratis in the QCC to get that understanding and to develop that further on their own. I think this is the most important aspect of the 2030 agenda.
Thanks very much. If I can just refer back again to something that Steve Lai said this morning, that is the common language of quality that exists between industry, government, and consumers that makes it sustainable over the longer period. And it's absolutely admirable that that is the approach that you bring to bear on it. Howard Kerr, you've been chief executive of BSI since January 2009, having been on the board for a little while before that. You've got the most wonderful tagline, I think, that I've ever seen in respect of this particular space. That tagline is that BSI helps organizations make excellence a habit. So if I can build on this thought of the common language of excellence, this need to embed it across all segments of society, first of all, how does BSI think about that? And secondly, what roles do you play in facilitating that are helpful and material in realizing Vision 2030?
Yes, thank you. I would like to take some credit for our strapline, but actually some of you may realize the strapline actually is a very old one. It's from Aristotle. Aristotle actually made the statement of making excellent a habit, so we take no credit for that. But Aristotle was a very wise man, and I think he knows what we know, and that excellent organizations always aspire to be better. Excellence is never achieved. It's always an ambition and an aspiration. I think we saw, when I was at this forum last year, the ambition of Abu Dhabi to strive towards achieving excellence. And I made the point in my presentation last year that underpinning that journey towards achieving excellence through quality infrastructure is, of course, standards. And that's what BSI has been doing now for more than 100 years. But I have a sense, and I think this is a challenge for the Abu Dhabi QCC, is that Abu Dhabi should not see standards as just see themselves as really just being recipients of international standards. A mature quality infrastructure actually sees all partners being active participants in the creation and shaping of future standards. And I think increasingly Abu Dhabi needs to, and I'm sure will, take on more of a leadership role in standards creation based on your particular knowledge and your particular market conditions. There are particular, for example, climatic or cultural issues here which need to be reflected in full, broad consensus standards to make sure that they achieve a higher level of adoption. And that's very much our mission, to make sure that we drive that standards agenda and that it's relevant and to the topic. There was an emphasis in this section on the sectors and where standards and excellence can drive quality in particular sectors. What we see at BSI is 5 particular sectors where we see quality infrastructure using standards being driven very, very hard. Food, energy, healthcare, the ICT sector, and what I would call complex manufacturing. So those manufacturing industries such as aerospace and defense, for example, where there are multiple players at play. And the traditional view of quality has very much, as Wolfhard mentioned, has been around risk management. It's been around safety. It's been about preventing things happening, preventing bad things from happening. But increasingly in the 5 sectors I mentioned, standards are being adopted and used and are being seen as enablers. Yes, risk management is important, but opportunity capture is equally important, I think, in the standards agenda. So quality infrastructure is as much about preventing the downsides as enabling the upsides. Increasingly, though, we don't look at the world in discrete sectors. The world has become more complex, more integrated, more interdependent. And actually, the way I see standards and quality infrastructure evolving beyond individual sector issues, whether it's children's toys or the nuclear industry, for example, is around the issue of supply chain. We have an awful lot of activity at the moment around partners in supply chains wanting to collaborate and work together to build quality together, not in isolation in their quality departments, but across complex supply chains, across geographies, across sectors. For example, an enormous amount of work we're doing at the moment in the UK, but also increasingly with other standards bodies around the world in smart cities. The development of the smart cities, or the future city as some people will talk about it, requires a cross-sectoral approach to be applied. Transport, utilities, communication, social services, for example. Standards are the great enabler to make that happy, but it does to happen. But it does require there to be, before that happens, a quality infrastructure in place. So I think it's really important and significant that Abu Dhabi has recognized that the top-down approach initially is required to create the framework for that success. And just a final comment about the use of standards in driving quality. There is an evolution happening, and it is already happening. The first generation of standards were very much dependent on product quality. The second generation were around processes, of which quality, ISO 9001, being the main example, was driven. The third generation of standards which I think is really, really interesting, and where potentially Abu Dhabi can leap straight into the second generation without necessarily having to go through some of the learnings of other countries. And the third generation of standards is really around organizational behavior, about releasing business potential from people and organizations. Business ethics, corporate governance, for example, is a new definition of quality on the block, which doesn't replace or displace any of the existing definitions, but it adds an extra dimension. That's why that level of complexity requires there to be a really, really robust quality infrastructure in place to manage all of those complexities across all of the many sectors and supply chains that I've mentioned.
Thanks very much, Howard. I'm now going to come to Hussein Al-Kathiri, who is, of course, Secretary General of the QCC, the person charged with delivering on the promise and of enabling, through the provision of quality and conformance, the bedrock, the infrastructure, the platform on which to enable the realization of Vision 2030. Hussein, you obviously have a deep bed of experience in respect of these areas over the entirety of the period that you've been involved with it. And I think it would be very helpful if you would tell us something of the journey that the QCC has undertaken to date. We heard the Singaporean journey this morning, and clearly the Abu Dhabi journey was informed by that as well as by other experiences. But what is the nature of that journey, and what do you see over the next 5-year horizon in response to the observations made by others?
Thank you, Sean. Well, if you look at the picture that Dr. Steve Lai, is it clear? If you look at
I'm
the
sorry,
picture,
I didn't hear the sound very well. Is that all right?
Is it fine? Why me?
Be
It's okay
terrible
now?
if we missed it.
Yeah? Okay. This need to be checked.
That sounds better.
Yeah. If you look at the picture that Dr. Steve Lai had in his presentation about the team that started this, actually I was disappointed that I did not see myself in there. To be honest, the journey started in 2005, but actually it started much, much more or earlier than that. My friend and colleague Hamid Shimri talked about the vision for Abu Dhabi. Most people know the Vision 2030 when it was formulated in 2008 or 2007. But the essence of the vision has been there for much, much longer than that. Since the inception of the Emirates and the oil resources, we knew that this is not going to last forever, and we need to do something about it. That something meant to go for other means of diversifying the economy. Now, in 2008 and 2007, what happened? As a government, we formulated the economic vision in a way that we can communicate it to everyone, all our stakeholders. So 2005 was the time when Zones Corp have started attracting investors and try to attract investors to manufacture in Abu Dhabi. This is when we started to understand that, like in Singapore, you need to do what we call the quality infrastructure. If you ask anyone in the room, what is quality infrastructure? Is it important for the economic vision? They all say yes. But I'm sure 90% of them, when they think, of course, you need to have infrastructure of good quality in order to support your vision. But it's not what we mean. What we mean here, the quality infrastructure is actually the technical infrastructure that is required. The technical infrastructure, like standards, the way that you use standard in the proper way, the testing, and so on. So in 2005, we had to understand the landscape of the Emirate. Where is it that we want to go, and what is it that we have? And we realized that to achieve the vision for the Emirate, we have to do so much. After 3 or 4 years now, I think we only scratched the surface. Like my friend again, Hamid, said, he needs to see more certification when it comes to aerospace. And we promise we'll deliver this. But give us some time. It's a journey that we took since 2005. The law was passed in 2009, and we started operation in 2010. When we looked at, I'll take you back to 2005, and when we understood the technical infrastructure, we saw that if you look at the 6 of them, start with standards, then there's 5 tools to ensure that you are conforming to the standard. For standards, we had, of course, Emirates Standardization Authority, and they had more than 5,000 or 7,000 standards then. But when we looked at Abu Dhabi regulator, they were not using those standards. And there's no use of standards unless they've been adopted and used. Keeping standard on the shelf will not help. Of course, every regulator, in their mind, they only understand, I need to protect or do my job within my function. No one is understanding cross-governmental, what is it that we need, how we can use standards, how we can harmonize. This is when we felt there is a need for an organization like QCC to help harmonize standards locally and integrate them federally with the Emirates Authority. Second, with standards, we wanted to, like Singapore and others, to ensure the use of standards for productivity. In the developed countries, you would have industries that far advanced, that they will be talking to each other without the need of the government and try to harmonize standards among themselves to ensure productivity. Where if you want to create these standards, it's a chicken and egg thing, where you need to first harmonize standards, bring the small industry together to ensure productivity. And that's another role that we felt someone in Abu Dhabi needs to do. The other element, which is, what I think is the last jigsaw in our puzzle, which is the metrology. The EMI, and we are proud today to have announced it, and with the support of the Emirates Authority, we'll be able to recognize this as National Measurement Institute for the country. Hopefully, next 2 weeks, as promised. The testing, however, we had, for the functions that the government were having, not looking at the future industries like aerospace and the semiconductor or any other pharmaceutical, whatever it is. For the functions that the government were having requirement, we had very good and excellent capability. But obviously they were not efficient because everyone was looking at it again from their perspective. So we needed somebody to do the consolidation, and that's what we did. And we started the missing testing capabilities like pharmaceutical and electrical coming in the future. We have fire labs coming in, electromagnetic compatibility, cosmetics, toys, whatever. So all those consumer products, we are also looking at them. Now, where do we get our priorities? Why aerospace was not part of it? Well, to be honest, like Howard Kerr said, and the rest of the panel, safety was always the issue. And safety when it comes to consumers, that nobody is looking after their requirements. So we felt as a government that we need to look at take the priority to protect consumers. Of course, industries are in our mind, and we are working closely with them. Last year in the forum, we have announced the quality governance. We identify a champion from every industry to represent their industry and their challenges. We have gathered those challenges, and we will put this in our next 5-year strategy to ensure that the priority comes from the industry as well as from our current stakeholders that we currently working closely with, which are the government entities. When it comes to legal metrology, which is the mandate of the federal government, we are working closely with them. Like His Excellency, the Chairman, mentioned in his speech, we have ensured that all weighing scales or any measurement that's used for trade, so whether it is pre-packages or is it a scale or is it a fuel pump or whatever it is being verified by QCC. So I think that's a big step. In Singapore, it took them from 1960 to the 90s to start realizing the quality and the achievements. I'm sure will not take that long. but I'm sure it's going to take some time. And it can only happen if we work together, industry, government, all the stakeholders, to achieve what the Vision 2030 is about. The next 5 years, the second part of the question, what do I see in the next 5 years? I see for EMI, the Emirates Meteorology Institute, we go to the second and the third phase. Today we have identified 7 areas that we thought are eminent, are important for the economy. There are 2 other phases that will reach the capability to 21 areas. Now we're hoping that within the next 5 years, we will reach this. When it comes to testing, I'm hoping that we will start further improve in our current capability and be more efficient. When it comes to pharmaceutical, already we started the service and we're hoping that we go to the next phase. We hope to see the rest of the construction capability. We start to see the consumer product testing and hopefully working together with the aerospace industry to start certifying some of their products.
Super, thanks very much. I'm going to do one follow-up question in order to pull out the answer or an attempted answer to the second question that was set for us for this panel. And that is the 5 sectors that you think are, or the 3 sectors, or the 7 sectors that you think are most likely to benefit from the creation of this quality infrastructure over the next 5 years. Now let me frame it, if I may. In the Vision 2030 document, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 global focus areas, and there are 5 regional focus areas. Now, let me read them just to share them with everyone, because it's important, I think, when you are talking about building a quality infrastructure, to understand what purposes it is supposed to serve. So the global focus areas were energy, and obviously that meant largely oil and gas, chemicals, metals and mining, aviation, aerospace and defense, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology and life sciences, hospitality, hotels, restaurants and services, and healthcare equipment and services. The regional focus areas were transportation, trade and logistics, education, media, financial services, and telecommunications services. I'm just interested from our Emirati panelists in the first instance, where do you see, Hamed, let me come to you first, where do you see the likely benefits of this quality infrastructure that is in the process of construction and, as Hussein has just said, quite well down the track at the moment? In which of those sectors do you see the primary benefits emerging in the next 5 years?
Well, I think it's a very simple answer. All of them.
Good.
Because there is no circumstances in my mind where I can say quality benefits or the infrastructure benefits a specific industry more than others. I think the fundamental question is, how involved are we globally? So we need to put priority on it. Let's talk about nuclear, for example. And I think Mohammed can talk about this at a later stage, much more extensive than I. But with all of the eyes of the world looking at this region and how the UAE, for example, is dealing with this compared to other players in the region, it is very important that this infrastructure exists for it to show that credibility that we're trying to build around the globe. But all of them on a regional or an international level must be a priority. And I cannot think in any circumstance, as I said earlier, where I say one is more important than the other.
Hussein?
Yeah, I would second what Hamed said, but I would say that the quality governance will give us the guidance into understanding the priority for the sectors. At the end of the day, it's a trade-off between cost and benefit. So what is it that's going to bring the Emirate the most value? This is where we're going to focus. Now, if I can just group the two into services versus manufacturing, then you will see that manufacturing is closer at this stage for us to serve, where services might take a bit longer because the private sector is serving this much more than the manufacturing. However, after our little discussion today with someone from the Executive Council, I think we bring services too.
Well, as you know, we're all under a highly significant degree of time pressure in respect of this morning. I've just had a note asking if we can provide a platform for the next panel to take over from us, which of course we're all delighted to do. I hope that we've succeeded in framing the issue for you in the course of this panel. We don't have any choices. If we want to realize Vision 2030, we have to ensure that the environment in which excellence emerges from a consciousness about quality is entrenched throughout the entirety of society. That means creating that common language of quality among government, industry, and consumers. It involves partnering with the most experienced, the most knowledgeable, and the most advanced institutes and companies in the world in this regard. And it means continuing to compete against the best, because it is precisely through competition that one consistently drives up the wedge that defines the lower reaches of acceptable quality. We're going to have an opportunity of digging deeper into all of these issues in the course of the remaining period during the forum. But I'd simply like to invite you now to express your appreciation to the panelists for the way in which they framed the issue in this session.